Welcome everybody back to day 7 of the Canadian Intercollegiate Exhibition. We just finished our panel on student leaders in esports. So if you missed it, don't worry. We have all of the VODs from CIE available on our Twitch and YouTube, and they will be available after the event. So anyways, we are on to our next panel, which we will take a deep dive into what goes into creating your favorite games from conception to publication. So again, my name is Jennifer, and I will be your host for this panel. Today we have 3 panelists joining us, and I'd like to start by having each of our guests introduce themselves and either telling us a kind of their origin story of their username, or B, their all-time favorite game. So I guess, Jay, let's start with you.
Okay, my name is Jay. I am currently a student at SFU in software systems, going to my 4th year. I work in a small indie group at SFU, and we're currently trying to make our first game called Project Azure. We haven't really chosen a proper name yet. I would say my favorite game of all time, and I know this is a little bit basic because a lot of game developers my age will say the same thing, will be Dark Souls, because when I was in elementary school, my dad got a copy of it from his friend and he was like, okay, try this game out. It's really hard. And I went, ooh, what's this? Right. And that kind of, it all went downhill from there. It's a big inspiration for me. It really made me try to want to make something of my own similar. So, yeah.
Okay, I guess I can go next. My name is Mark. I'm 24 years old. I've recently graduated from SFU, and I'm currently working as a junior game designer. And let's see, picking a favorite game is really tough because I have a lot. But if I were to choose one, it would probably have to be Skyrim. So, I've been playing that game since I was in 9th grade. And, I think having a lot of players still play the game today is a testament to how great the game design was. So, yeah.
Cool. I guess I'll go next. My name is Min, and I'm 45, I think. So, I've been developing games since the early 90s, or actually the mid 90s when the Doom came out, and yeah, my nickname Gooseman actually comes from a cartoon. Everyone thinks it comes from Top Gun, but it comes from a cartoon called Galaxy Rangers. And I've been developing games since the early 90s, and I've been able to work at some really cool companies such as Valve and Facepunch Studios. And currently I'm working at a company called Pearl Abyss, and it's situated in Korea. And I'm currently working on an unannounced project. So yeah, I'm excited to announce it probably end of the year. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, awesome. That'll
Cool.
be exciting to see a new game
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah.
So that's awesome for all of you. Welcome. So now that we know a little bit about each other, so
Mm-hmm.
from what I understand from our conversations that I've had with each of you, is that you're all in kind of various stages of your game development, game production journeys. And not to put you on the spot, Jay, but you are the newest person to this. So I guess what kind of got you into this game development route that you wanted to go on?
So the way I would think about it, actually, I say the best way to describe it is I've always really been interested in science and specifically computer science. I started the science club in my high school, so I was always a very nerdy kid, but I also had a lot of an artistic style. My grandma was a painter and she tried to teach me to paint when I was little, and I was horrible at it, but I wanted to be a writer. So I kind of saw game development as a way of kind of bringing these two paths together where I get to code, I get to do all those things that I love and develop application, but I also get to tell a story and kind of have some of that catharsis and get that out. So yeah.
That's really cool. I actually didn't know that about your history. Definitely it is an art form. But speaking of kind of art and tech, I know Mark, you are part of the CIAT program at SFU. So I guess what
Mhm.
got you into this stream?
Yeah, so ever since I was a kid, I was just surrounded by games. It would go from Pokemon to Tekken on the PS2 to various shooters. So, that has always been an interest in my life, and I've always wanted to see what could happen if, various genres could branch in and, merge their game design aspects together. So, like I've been coding since high school and all that stuff, but it was really the design aspect that caught my eye. And it's more on the creative side. You get to build mechanics, talk to different people on other teams to sort of have this cross disciplinary sort of mindset when you tackle these games, which I do enjoy.
Mhm.
So yeah, that brought me to CIE because I saw that they had a bunch of game design courses, so I wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, I think those courses were definitely courses I wanted to take.
Yeah,
Never had the chance. They were always full. So
they're always full, yeah, for sure.
if you do go to SFU, anyone out there, definitely try going for those courses. But I guess yeah, so man, you do come from a bit of more of the traditional
Mm-hmm.
background in computer science. You graduated
Mm-hmm.
in 2004, if my research
Actually,
is correct.
I think 2002.
Two.
God, it's been a while, but I think it's
Just
2001. 2001, I think.
you graduated
Yeah,
a while ago. What is you
yeah,
graduated.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Back then, I don't think they even had game design. I think the only course related to games that I took back then was animation, and they just kind
mm,
of taught you how to animate in like using 3D studios. We would just create these kind of like Pixar animation stuff.
no, okay, okay.
Mhm.
So I guess what was since you didn't have those game design
Mm-hmm.
courses, I guess what inspired you to kind of mod
Mm-hmm.
another game and kind of bring CS to
Mm-hmm.
life?
Mm-hmm. So I was always a gamer, even when I was like 9 years old. So I was always just around games. So it was natural that I would be playing games all the time. And so when Doom came out and like the opportunity to like edit the game became possible, I just kind of jumped in it because I guess I've always been kind of creative. I love drawing, so that's probably one of the reasons why I just kind of jumped on it. I was just like I loved the game Doom, and I just wanted to create levels for it. And so when it became like accessible to for like just an amateur to just modify the game, I think that's when I just like just started to learn the tools of it. Like, and I think I just kind of picked it up on my own. I mean, back then it was really hard because we didn't have like YouTube or stuff. So we I just had to go to these websites, and so and also, we had something called IRC, which is similar to Discord today. So that was kind of a way for us to communicate with peers. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
Mhm.
definitely forgot that existed. It's been a while.
Yeah, it was the precursor to like, yeah, it came up before, like even ICQ. It was just super old IRC. Yeah. But
Mm,
anyways, yeah, it's the equivalent of Discord, which is what we have today.
okay. Well, I guess while you were working on the game, did you think it would be such a global success and really kind of the grandfather
Yeah.
of
No,
all FPS games?
no, not at all. I mean, when you make a game, you just kind of want to have like enough. You just want to have enough community to just be able to play it with like-minded people. And I think back then, the game industry was so young that it was like there was not a lot of competition, so it was kind of easier for a game like that to kind of blow up. I think because I guess there wasn't many games out there like quite like that, I guess. And so I mean, there was games like Rainbow Six, and but they kind of they were targeting a more hardcore audience who were more into like more uh, slower, more tactical kind of style gameplay. Whereas I think Counter Strike kind of appealed to a more wider audience, more mainstream audience that kind of enjoyed the twitch reflexes of a game like Quake, but also kind of wanted something a bit more team focused. And so I think that's kind of why Counter Strike kind of took off. It filled a niche that quite wasn't quite being filled by the other games. So yeah, it was. I think it was just the right timing for the game to kind of blow up. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely unique and just new for that time era, and it's really interesting to kind of see it progress. And I think we're getting a CS2 at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, 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 it's coming out real soon, and it's kind of amazing how the core gameplay hasn't really changed fundamentally, because I think Valve are very aware of the fact that they're just the gameplay is pretty kind of timeless, in the sense it's kind of like chess, they wanted to keep it simple and not too kind of just kind of modify it and kind of upset the core community.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I guess I know Mark is a pretty big fan of your game.
Mm.
Do you have any
Thank you.
questions for him?
Ooh. Yeah, no, I've been been playing CS since high school, right? So I've got like 1,000+ hours logged.
Oh, damn, yeah,
Yeah, it's a
more than
lot.
me
So
probably.
more than you, oh, really? Yeah, so
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I stopped playing in 2004, 2003.
oh,
So yeah, but yeah,
yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I used to
yeah,
play a lot, but yeah, these days I've been pretty busy. But yeah, that's
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
That was when Source was out, right? 2004, or was it
Yeah,
1.6?
yeah. That's when Source came out. No, actually, Source was around 2005 or something.
Mm,
Yeah, my memory's pretty bad back then, but yeah, it was. I think it was Source. Yeah, yeah, and
yeah.
then CS:GO, and then
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, so I was just wondering, like, the big question, like, how did you approach creating the main, like, main mechanics of the game? Because obviously in CS it's like, you got the T's and the CTs, and the
yeah.
plan for the T's to plant the bomb and stuff like that. So before
Mm-hmm.
CS there was games like Quake, which was more fast paced. So I was wondering how
Mm-hmm.
you sort of came up with the
Yeah.
slower, more tactical style of gameplay.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. Because I think, as you said, the games like Quake are super fast paced, and they don't really focus too much on team play. But actually, before I invented Counter Strike, I actually worked on a previous game called Action Quake, which was developed by this other team, and I was just kind of a part of it. But I actually was inspired by a lot of the things that they did, and that game kind of actually, I would say, inspired a lot of the game mechanics that I put into Counter Strike. For
Mm,
example, in that game, when you died, you didn't respawn. So I think that was the biggest thing that kind of that really like was what made Counter Strike what it is. It's just the fact that when you die, you don't have that ability to respawn. So that really encouraged people to kind of value their life, and to play more as a team and just stick together more. And that was a big factor in just the team cohesion. But in terms of like the setting for Counter Strike, I was mostly inspired by some of the older arcade games that I used to play, like Virtual Co-op and like Time Crisis. Those types of games, like just the cops versus robbers kind of thing. I was also really inspired by movies like the John Woo Hong Kong action movies back in the 90s. And so that kind of style of gameplay kind of inspired me to kind of make Counter Strike a little bit more accessible to the mainstream, and not as hardcore and realistic uh, for like example games like Rainbow Six or
mm,
Ghost Recon, which kind of catered to a different audience who were more much more military and more serious about the gameplay. So yeah, I think Counter Strike was just found that nice balance between like Quake and Rainbow Six, and just
mm.
kind of filled a niche there.
Yeah, cool.
Mm,
Yeah, and
yeah.
what's also interesting to me was, CS has a lot of guns and weapons, and the balancing
Hmm.
nuances that went into those
Hmm.
weapons. So I was just wondering, how did you approach balancing those? I don't
Yeah.
know, like 20 weapons or something like that.
Yeah, it was a lot of just iteration, and also just getting feedback from the community, because with the very first versions of Counter Strike, they were like super unbalanced. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember we had like the shotgun, we can kill people from across the map. So so obviously after like playtesting the game, we realized, nah, this isn't working. This is like, so it was just after playtesting like maybe like 4 or 5 beta versions, we kind of nailed the balance for the guns.
Mm,
And so a lot of it was just getting the feedback from the players, just playing it, with a lot of people, and just it just became kind of obvious how we needed to balance the guns. So um, yeah, it was mostly just kind of just community feedback that was kind of driven. That was just kind of driving the game mechanics in terms of balance. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all from my end. If I got more questions, then I can ask more later. But yeah,
Yeah. No, please feel
but
free.
thank you. Yeah.
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 Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, so I guess, iterations, try again, balancing
Mhm.
repeatedly, just honor
Yeah,
features
yeah,
is kind of definitely
yeah.
one of the themes for developers and producers. So I guess it's
Mhm,
just due to a lot of the intricacies and moving components involved with games, to creating kind of a full-fledged functioning game, but also making sure that,
mhm,
you know, bugs are out and there's no glitches. And I know that can be, difficult and frustrating at times.
mhm,
I guess for you, Jay, as again the newest person into this, um, what are, I guess, some of the challenges you've had to face as uh, in your situation as creating an indie game with your student club?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of unique challenges. The one obvious one is just coordinating a bunch of young, kind of immature people into doing things. And a lot of what we've done is, I think we're at on the ninth prototype, and we're constantly switching genre and changing our mind about what we want to do. So we finally decided we had to focus on this one thing. I think the biggest thing, though, for me is the wearing of different hats. Because, for instance, I don't have $1,000 to go out there and hire a sound designer. So what we've had to do is I've been studying sound design in my spare time to try to actually make nice sound effects for the game. So I'm doing programming, some sound design things, a little bit of story stuff, and then also helping with some sprites. And that's a lot of people on the team. Is we're small, we don't really have the resources that a big company would. So we kind of have to step out of our comfort zone and work on multiple parts of the game rather than focusing in on one task.
mhm.
Mm.
I just had some quick advice regarding something. Are you familiar with websites that sell sound effects? There's a lot of these great ones. I go to this one website in particular that I really like called sounddogs.com, and
Yeah.
they've got like a huge array of these sound clips that you can just kind of purchase individually, and they're like $3 or $4 for each clip. Or some of them go for like $2, $3, but it's pretty affordable. And I was able to get a lot of sound effects from Counterflight from a lot of these websites that have sound. Some of them are free actually.
Okay.
Some websites have free sound clips. You can, but yeah, you might want to check that out if you need some good sound effects. But
Thank you for the advice. I'll definitely look into that.
yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, yeah. Game development can be pretty expensive. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult having to do many things at once and then never really even expert having too much focus on one part. I guess does
Mhm.
that for Mark, does that change now that you're in a studio? Do you still wear multiple hats as well, or is it a little bit more separated into these are my tasks and these are your tasks?
I wouldn't say that it's, sort of separating each other. If you're in a studio, the main point is that you're in a team and you want to be able to communicate clearly with each other, what you want to do. So it's not sort of like you're being a hermit in your own space and then you have the others do their own thing. I don't think that's an effective way to develop a game, because that could lead to conflicts, right? It's like, if you're not talking to your team and then they want something different and you want something different, and that's going to cause fights. So it's just sort of allowing the other disciplines to be within your circle and just be able to talk to them. That's
Mm,
basically it. Yeah.
yeah. Have you have any have you have you had any challenges with, I guess, I don't know if you did any game development outside of your work prior to that, but just challenges even within working with a team and new people or even with game design itself.
Yeah, so before I started working, I took a lot of game design courses in SFU. And in my major, it's very team oriented. So like in games, you just have to sort of choose your team and things of that nature. So you have to consider many things. For example, the scope of your project and the deadline. So if you're creating, let's say, a big game, but your deadline is super short, then that's going to cause a lot of issues with your team. So it's sort of just being more realistic with your work and, consider the skills of your teammates and the time frame that it takes to create these games. And, yeah, things should be smooth sailing after that.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, that was definitely a challenge, like when I started, right? It's just, yeah, just recognizing those issues at the start.
That is, yeah. I mean, it's good that you had the practice of being able to be very flexible
Mhm.
with your work.
Yeah.
So I guess this will go to you, Min, as kind of a, I was gonna say programmer, as a developer, producer, programmer, whatever you can call you, who's
Oh, sure,
had a
sure.
lot of experience in the industry. Um, what are some of the challenges you had with CS, but also with the other games and companies you've worked with and on, and kind of how do they compare to each other?
So with Counter-Strike, the challenges were mostly in the form of, um, I think it was mostly in the form of just communication with the level designers. Because back then our team was kind of all over the world, but thankfully the core team, which was myself and Jess Cliffy, it was just two of us, so it was kind of easy to kind of coordinate our tasks and just basically get on the same page with regards to what needed to be done for the core game. But in terms of like the creation of the levels, the maps that the players would play within, those were all created by the community. So the biggest challenge was just coordinating, like like they would develop the maps, and then they would kind of send us versions of it, and then we would play test it. And so it was challenging to just deal with the different time zones of getting a proper time that we can all kind of play the map together. And so we were working with level designers from all over the world. So that was probably the biggest challenge, just getting everything just coordinated and just getting the testing times in sync so it would work with for everybody on the team. So but I think aside from that, Counter Strike was pretty smooth sailing because we had a small team, and a lot of the like I was able to do all the programming and all the modeling for the weapons and the sound design. So having just all of that kind of done by just one person didn't like it eliminated any of the you know I guess the communication that was required when you work in a team. I kind of knew what this is what needed to be done. I didn't need to relay that message to someone else. I didn't need to wait for someone else to finish his work before I could do my work. It was just easier that way. But when I was started working on larger teams, for example, working at Face Punch, which was also done remotely, I would be working in Vancouver, and then my other teammates were kind of scattered all over the world. There were situations where I would have to wait for someone to finish his work before I could do anything. So there was times where I was just kind of left twiddling my thumbs, trying to keep myself busy because there was just had to wait for someone else. So that was a challenge working in a remote environment when your teammates are kind of all over the world, and they work at different schedules than you do. So you had to kind of deal with the scheduling conflicts, and yeah, oftentimes I would just have to try to keep myself busy with tasks that were more modular and didn't require me to wait on another teammate to finish his work before I can do something. So yeah, it was just a lot of just trying to keep myself busy with tasks that were just independent of the other team. But when I was working in a proper studio like Valve, like was working in the office, so everything was there was no communication, scheduling difficulties. It was just we were just working in the office, and everybody was able to speak with each other right away. So in that environment, the challenges were just mostly, I think, just dealing with differing opinions on how the game design should be done. Because when you work on a project, you always have to have one person that has the clear vision for the project. You can't have it becomes very difficult when there's like 3 or 4 people with differing like goals and different visions for the game, because there's just too much confusion, and it's not good for the project. So it was really important that we had like 1 or 2 guys at the top who were dictating the vision for the game. And so that was really important, because I was working on a project called DFC, and so for that project it was clear that who was in charge. And it's just a matter of just letting them make the decisions, and then we would provide any feedback. But for the most part, like if they didn't agree with the feedback, then we had to accept the fact that it was their vision, and we just kind of went with it. So yeah, I mean, just having a clear distinction between okay, so whose game design is this? Just letting them kind of dictate the direction of the game, and that was kind of that was the biggest challenge at working at Valve. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I still enjoyed it though, even though I was working with someone else's vision. It's just, I understood my role in the project, and so I accepted that. But it was cool. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
it must have also been nice not to be the one always having to make those executive decisions as well, probably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, that's a good point. Yeah, because it takes a lot of pressure off when you just kind of say, okay, you decide, and just I'll go with it. And if the community kind of lashes back, I just say it was his decision. So yeah,
Start to point
yeah.
fingers at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that never really happened. No. But it was fun. I really enjoyed working at Valve. I mean, actually, working at Valve, you're surrounded by like so many talented people. Everybody was really kind of like I was able to learn so much from that environment. So it was a really awesome place to work at.
Well, that is
Yeah.
great to hear. Well, anyone wanting to work at Valve, it is approved. It's an approved place. Mm.
Maybe in
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah. It's changed quite a bit from when I was there. So in 2005, it was much smaller. So now it's I hear that it's changed a little bit. So but I'm sure it's still a very very cool place to work at. Very you know yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I guess kind of the next question is, a lot of us probably around our ages for Jay and Mark, we grew up playing games kind of 2000s if you were born.
Hmm.
2010s, 2020s, and kind of we were able to see and play the different styles of games and have them change the graphic, change the console, all of that. So I guess what kind of back end developmental changes have you noticed, Min? But also, I guess maybe some like key ones that you're like, oh, this is the new one. This is the tech we need to look at.
Okay. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I think in terms of art, I mean, the tools that we use to create art, that definitely changed from the early 2000s. Just the methodology in which we needed to create, like, for example, textures for like the models. Back then, we didn't have to create. Right now, we have something called PBR, which is like physically based something. But anyways, the graphics when we create materials for a model nowadays, you have to create something called like a diffuse texture, and then a normal texture, which kind of defines the bumpiness of your model, and then you have to define like roughness texture, and then like a metallic. So there is a lot more assets you need to create just to create a model in today's game development. But back in the back in the 90s, you just created like one texture. It was just called a diffuse texture, and then that was it. And then you just kind of let the engine kind of light it up as well. So I think just in terms of the art, like the tools that we use to create assets to create those textures, it was much simpler back then. We would just use something called Photoshop. But these days we use much more advanced tools such as Substance Painter, which is it's a texturing program. So that was a big change, just changing from that skill set, having to learn how to create like PBR textures was a big change. And but aside from the art creation side of things, like when it came to programming, I actually it hasn't changed too much. I mean, I still use C++, like even back then, in, and even today, I still use C++ for working with the Unreal Engine. But the tools that I use in creating, like in programming, I'm still using Visual Studios. I still, um, yeah, I mean, the tools that I used to program, actually, to be honest, they haven't really changed too much. It's just the engine changes, because back then I was working on the Half-Life engine, and back then the engine it was limited. It didn't have as many like features as today's engine, such as the Unreal Engine. So I mean, back then the engines were quite primitive, and did like a lot of the features that I wanted to do didn't exist. So for example, like I wanted to have vehicles in Counter-Strike, but it was not possible with the engine back then. But these days, the Unreal Engine is it's so fully featured and so complete that it has a lot of the features. So it saves a lot of work in terms of having to program those features. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's good to hear that the programming languages are just still pretty same. If you learn it, you're probably good for life. I kind of had the
Mhm.
unfortunate experience of learning Jupyter.
Mhm.
Exactly.
What is
No, nobody
that?
knows what Jupyter is. I think I learned it in like an intro to stats class. And I went to our stats workshop and was like, hey, can I get help? And all of the stats majors looked at me and was like, why aren't you learning C++? And I'm like, I don't know. Okay. Then some of the TAs ended up sending me away. They're like, yeah, I don't know. But anyways, so I guess speaking of technology, Jade, we've spoken about this a little bit, and I know SFU is already kind of incorporating advanced technology like AI and AR into some of their creative projects. Um, but where do you hope that is gonna kind of go and be incorporated in the future?
So speaking on like alternate reality and virtual reality, I've seen a lot of people that think that's gonna take over gaming, and this is like speculative. Obviously, we don't know what's gonna happen, but my thought on it is VR is pretty fun, but I think it's not going to take over gaming because if you look at like the most popular games, stuff like Fortnite, League of Legends, all that kind of stuff, it's not very immersive, right? And that's what VR and alternate reality does better than anything else, is giving you that immersion. But I think what a lot of people try to get from games is the social aspect and the challenge aspect. So I think it's going to be a very popular thing, very fun, but there's a long way to go. Like if you have a VR, right, you can only walk so far no matter how big your house is until you hit a wall, right? So we have to figure out stuff with that. On the AI stance, I actually to prepare for this, I interviewed a relative who researches AI, and one thing that it's already be used for is for optimizing CPU and GPUs, so we can run games a lot better. And one thing that I've been looking into is using an AI for actual like the enemies within single player games, because I think a big draw of multiplayer games is like Counter-Strike, right? You can play it forever because everyone's always getting better. There's always your opponents are always improving, so there's always more skill to gain. Whereas Dark Souls 1, I've been playing that since elementary school. It's gotten to the point where like you know how to abuse the AI, you know everything it does, right? You know exactly what attack's going to come out from every range. So I think AI can be used to actually make smarter enemies that learn with the player. And it does have some problems because it is like a newer technology, but like especially where like more complicated AIs you can't run locally. But games like Dominion, like card games and turn-based games where you have an AI that only runs on like a few hundred parameters, you can realistically run that on a normal computer. So that's something I'm excited for.
I think that that would be definitely cool to see. Like, I don't know if it's the first. I haven't done my research on that. Like
Yeah.
a game that involves AI and there's certain inputs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as like, yeah, I definitely agree with you. You know, the VR, AR is it's come a long way. I still remember when Pokemon Go's AR feature was like earth-shattering. Like we can see Pikachu on my desk, yay! And they came out with the Oculus, and now we have like full studios. So hopefully they become definitely more accessible um, in the future. Because I know already this is actually happening at SFU. We have a prof or two doing kind of serious gaming, is what he has coined it, and it's for them. It's very much like you were describing, but it's more of a like AI training simulator for like nurses. So instead of kind of coming in person to get that training, it's like they can put that program on, walk through all of the steps and be like, oh, this is a more accessible way for me to be trained, or even, globally we can train people together. Anyways, so I think, are kind of almost ish at the end of our panel. Um, so I always like to close panels, and you all have like some time left over, so don't feel like you need to rush anything. Um, it's always nice for me, or that I like to close panels with a bit of a advice portion. So first we'll go to you, Mark and Jay, in that order. What is some advice you would give to people looking to enter the game development space, or like what skills they need, where should they come from, or even like what resources helped both of you, or are currently helping both of you on your journeys?
Mhm. So yeah, I think anyone can go into game development, right? There's a myriad of resources on YouTube and stuff like that. And the biggest advice I could probably give is to just start. So, pick a language you're comfortable with, or if you're planning to work at specific companies, sort of try to investigate and see what languages they specialize in and maybe go into that. But yeah, just start off with a language you're comfortable with, and then of all the games you've played, just pick out the fun aspects of those games and try to create something unique. So your game doesn't have to be complex. It could be a single player game. It could be Pong, and you could sort of approach it with that mindset. It's like, how can you make Pong more interesting? Can you use two balls? And you sort of try to keep on building on those mechanics, and just make sure to listen to the players. It's like, as developers, you can get so tunnel vision into your work that you sort of miss the small things, and having playtesting sort of helps you iron out those errors in your game. So that's the biggest advice I can give, for sure.
For me, I'm not an expert, obviously, right? But the number one thing that I've found is you just have to go for it. One thing that held me back a long time, and I wish I would have started my game development journey earlier, is fear of failure. Maybe I'm not good enough, right? And I think you just have to go for it, right? Because like you only have one life, right? Give it a shot. I want to give it a good try to get somewhere in the gaming industry. So that's what I'd say for everyone else is just start doing it in your free time, stop procrastinating, don't make excuses, just get going. And even if you fail, you will have had a lot of fun. I've already had a lot of fun doing this for about a year and a half, like failing and getting a little farther and failing and getting a little farther. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and just to sort of branch onto that, don't be afraid of failure, because I believe that good games come from failure if you're persistent enough to learn from your mistakes. And don't be afraid to connect with other people in the industry, because that'll be a big help. You can sort of see how they approach these sorts of things, right? So yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely would re-emphasize that the don't be afraid of failure, because I mean, I've failed a couple of times in my 20 years. So as long as you, I mean, it's an opportunity for you to learn from your mistakes, and be honest about why it failed. So don't sugarcoat it. Don't say, oh, it was because of someone else or other factors. Sometimes you make your own mistakes, and but definitely your failures, you can learn from them, and you can just it'll help you to improve your work in the future. So yeah, but definitely don't be afraid to try something if you think that it's going to fail. I mean, yeah, I mean, don't go into a project knowing that it's gonna fail, but just don't be like afraid. Don't try to like think too far ahead. Oh, this might happen, that might happen. No, that's not healthy. Just go in there. Just believe in your your project, and just give it a shot. Yeah, but I think it also helps to kind of expose your project to other opinions uh, when it's possible, when you have like a vertical slice of your game, show it to someone else and then get some feedback. Getting feedback early on is really important to kind of help guide you and to show you that maybe you need to make a few changes here and there, because I think that's one of my mistakes that I made with the failures that I've done in the past. I developed that project that I made that failed. I developed it in a very closed environment for like 5 years, and then after 5 years, I showed it, and then I was like, "Whoa, what the heck is this? You could have done this better. You could have done that better." And if I kind of exposed the game earlier on, I would have pivoted a bit and kind of modified the game so it would address some of those concerns. So I think that would be my biggest advice is when you have your game ready for like a vertical slice, or you have enough of your game to show it to somebody. Really, it's important to get like a second opinion on your game, and not just internally from your own team, because when you develop the game internally and you're playing with your own teammates, you kind of gloss over the roughness of it, and you kind of you don't see the areas where oh shit, this is not obvious to new players. It's really important to get a second opinion on your game as soon as possible. I would suggest. Yeah.
Mm, yeah, that
Hmm.
definitely seems to kind of be the theme. Try again, repeat.
Hmm.
Failure is kind of your friend. We don't get
Hmm.
anywhere if we're succeeding all the time and everything is easy coasting.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is life.
Hmm.
Okay, so anyways, that brings us to the end of our panel. I'm sure the audience enjoyed this just as much as I did, just listening from all three of you. Um, I'd like to thank you three again, Mark, Min, and Jay, for being here, spending about the hour chatting and kind of getting into what goes into game development, some advice, of course, and kind of what people out there can do to get involved. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, games are
Yeah.
really a labor of love, and a
Mhm.
lot of people will love them when hopefully we get to see all three of you have your new games out and published. Hopefully get to see it soon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Thank
so
you.
thank you once again.
Thank you.
And we
Thank
will
you.
be back for our next panel at about 2:30 PDT or 5 p.m. ET. That'll be our last panel of the day, and that is called Breaking Boundaries. Well, you will hear from Tiffany and Melanie. Tiffany and Malia from Team Liquid, two students who participate in the Dell's Girls Who Game program. Emily, SFU Esports Association's president and current intern at Microsoft, as well as myself, who I am actually a panelist for once instead of a host. Anyways, stay tuned and we will see you there.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of the event and panels. Yeah. I wish I was there in person. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you again, Min, for being here as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you.